The year is 1992. So I'm 8 years old and my family has just moved from Australia to the Netherlands. And before this I had only been taught English. Starting school in the Netherlands, that basically meant that I had to learn Dutch completely from scratch. And I was a pretty smart kid, so within a few months I pretty much picked up the language. And it was at a much faster rate than anyone else was expecting. My main teacher though, he wasn't quite aware of the progress that I was making. And he kept on translating and expecting that I didn't speak Dutch. And I didn't quite know how to break it to him that he didn't need to do that anymore. I could just perfectly understand him. And I kept quiet. So for about a month, I pretended that I couldn't understand Dutch. And this was mainly because I couldn't deal with the assumptions that people had made about me. Oh, and I realized I forgot to put that. So skip forward to 10 years. It's 2002 and I'm 18 years old. And I've decided to study computer science. Now, this is a bit of a weird decision for me because I had never programmed anything before in my life. I was good at maths though, and I kind of assumed I might be good at computer science as well. And it turns out I was. I passed all the exams, did all the assignments and everything like that, but just compared to the other people around me who had been, programming since they were 6 years old, I didn't feel as if I was good enough. So I started having all these doubts. These feelings of not feeling good enough and thinking that I didn't belong there, thinking that I should know all the stuff that these other people also knew. And I realized that this is now, this is what now is called imposter syndrome. And at the time though, I thought I was the only person experiencing this, and I wasn't. So skip forward another 10 years, it's 2012, I'm 28 years old, and I've been living in London now for about 6 years. And I've done a ton of different things. I've started my own blog, I've finished my thesis, I start attending meetups and Hackdays, I start winning them, I do my own startup, I do a ton of these things, and I do them quite well. But still, I have these feelings of not belonging and not feeling good enough. So skip forward to now, it's 2015, I'm 31 years old, and I'm here at a conference giving the first talk of the day. Am I nervous? Yeah. Am I scared? Definitely. But do I think I'm not good enough to do this, or that I don't belong here? No. So what changed? And the main difference was that I started working for a company called FutureLearn. So I started wondering why. Why was it that, as someone who experienced a lot of this imposter syndrome, why was that disappearing now? And what were we doing differently at FutureLearn that made me not have imposter syndrome anymore? So, as developers, we are constantly learning. We're expected to keep track of new technologies, languages, frameworks. We're expected to work with all these old technologies, frameworks, and languages. We're expected to work with, to solve never seen before bugs and problems. And we're expected to solve problems that might not necessarily have one single unique solution. And there's an overwhelming amount of things that we could know. And everything we do requires us to learn and adapt. And when we experience imposter syndrome, that feeling of not belonging and feeling not good enough, I think it's caused by the assumptions that we make about the rest of the world. We make assumptions about how we think we should act and behave and know things, because we think that other people believe that we need to know these things. And part of this is a personal issue. there are things that we each can do to help overcome this. But quick show of hands, who here feels this way? Keep your hands raised and now look around. So this isn't just a personal issue, I think. So I think the best way to deal with it is to think about what we each can do to help each other not feel this way anymore. How do we remove these assumptions that people make about what we're expected to know? So I think this can be primarily solved by highlighting the state of not knowing. So starting off by knowing nothing, making mistakes, and learning as we go along. It's all part of the process. And especially as developers, having the space and time to do all this, it helps us make the new assumptions that we think we should know. So what this comes down to, I think, is having a culture of learning where people can learn and fail. So how do we create this culture? So as I mentioned before, I work at FutureLearn, and as the name hints, we are basically focused on learning. So we're a social learning platform that works together with universities and other specialist institutions to create online courses. So our mission is to pioneer the best learning experiences for everyone, everywhere. And naturally, this means that most of our team is passionate about learning. And we're all interested in learning more and learning in better ways. So we didn't really set out to create a culture of learning at our company. But looking back, we very much had a right combination of people and ideas. And this culture just evolved to what it is now. And I think this is caused by two things. So the way we act and work together, and basically the different types of events and activities that we organize to support learning. So look first at how we work and act together. So I want to talk about 6 values or principles, or whatever you want to call them, about how we deal with others. And we've never really made these explicit in our company. It's more just things that we know we all do, and things that we do quote to each other as things we should be doing. So 1, embrace failure. So from a very, very early age, we're taught failure is bad. Failure means you didn't study, or you were lazy, or you were just not that smart. And failure is something to be ashamed of. But that's pretty much wrong. Making mistakes and failing, it's all part of learning something new. And we should accept that it will happen. So just think about the first time you tried to ride a bike or learn a new instrument. Did you ride that bike perfectly in one go down the streets? Did you play a piano concert the first time you tried to play the piano? No. Everyone fails the first time they're trying something. Part of learning is failing. So this is a quote from Ed Catmull, and he's one of the founders of Pixar. And he's basically now the president of both Pixar and Disney Studios. And his book, Creativity Inc., is all about how they created their culture at Pixar. And it's full of great anecdotes about how they created their culture. And I love this quote about embracing failure. So many people think it means accept failure with dignity and move on. The better, more subtle interpretation is that failure is a manifestation of learning and exploration. If you aren't experiencing failure, then you are making a far worse mistake. You are being driven by the desire to avoid it. So every mistake, every failure, it's part of that learning experience. And this shouldn't be a surprise to those of you that do like test-driven development or behavior-driven development. You don't just want to make your tests pass. You want to see them fail. So this is not just about embracing and accepting failure, but it's actively seeking it out and making sure that you do fail, because otherwise you don't know whether or not you're doing something right. If I'm saying that right. So then second is, there are no stupid questions. And this is something that I struggled a lot with. So I thought asking questions and admitting that I don't know something was a sign of defeat, a sign that I was a fake and that I didn't belong. And I remember basically being, at university or even at work, sitting in the corner, trying to get the courage to stand up and ask someone something. Because I thought that not doing that, doing that would be a sign that I was stupid. And I didn't want anyone to think I was stupid. So I didn't ask questions for a long time. So this is a quote from Carl Sagan. Every question is a cry to understand the world. So as I said before, the state of not knowing is part of the process. And there will always be times when we look at a bug or a new feature or something and we go, I have no idea where to start on this. And good developers, they know that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to ask for help. Nobody knows everything. So this also means, though, that we should never look down upon or make fun of the questions other people might have. Not everyone comes from the same background. So we should never stop asking questions, but more importantly, we should never stop answering them. So 3, trust people to do the right thing. So we believe that basically everyone that we've hired, they're working to the best of their abilities. Nobody is actively working to destroy all the stuff that we're building. Unless you've got a Russian spy in your company or something like that, but we don't live in that type of age anymore. So we trust that people, that our team members, are working towards the same goal as we are, and that they will make sensible decisions. So in some cases, the right thing, though, is not to work on something, or to ask for help with something. You trust that people know their own abilities and will make the right decisions. So here's another quote from Ed Catmull. Trusting others doesn't mean that they won't make mistakes. It means that if they do, or if you do, you trust they will act to help solve it. So the right thing isn't about not making mistakes. It's not about not failing. And giving people this trust, it eventually builds their confidence that they are making the right decisions. So it's a bit of a loop. And it takes time to do this, to learn how to make these good decisions. But you end up with much smarter people rather than just mindless drones that will do anything they're told. So 4, treat people like grown-ups. So this goes hand in hand with the previous one, but it's more focused on permission. We don't require everyone to ask permission for every single thing that they do. Since we trust that they'll make the right decision, we shouldn't put any rules or restrictions in place that will stop them from doing things. So another quote, if you treat an individual as he is, he will remain how he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be. So one example of this at my work is how we deal with committing code and pull requests. So we don't require every single thing that somebody works on to be in a pull request. Rather, we leave it up to each developer to decide whether or not they think it requires it. So if there are specific answers they want answered, or if they want specific feedback on certain methods, it's up to each person to make that decision. Otherwise, we just let them all commit to master in one go. So 5, don't focus on job titles. So we think it's important that people aren't confined by their title. So we don't want anyone thinking, I can't do X because I'm only a developer, where X could be lead a team, run a retrospective, or manage our infrastructure, or work on the backend story. Everyone on the team is encouraged to work on the skills they want to have, even if they might not necessarily have it yet. So another quote, if I keep on saying to myself that I cannot do a certain thing, it is possible that I may end up by really becoming incapable of doing it. So you don't need to be the best at something to be the one to do it. As long as you know who to turn to and who to ask questions to, it's okay if you pick it up and continue with it. Again, failure is part of the process, so we shouldn't avoid working on things that we don't know enough about. And the final one is give constructive feedback. So giving feedback and helping others improve themselves is a good thing, but you need to be constructive. So give feedback that allows people to understand the changes that they need to make. It's not just about saying, oh, I hate this thing. It's giving proper feedback. So here's an example. So rather than saying something like, I don't like your commit messages, give examples of exactly what you don't like about it and how this person can change to make things better. So those are the values that I believe that help us all learn better. So next up is how we support this. What are the explicit events and activities that we organize to enable learning within the company? So I think we can structure that in this way. So grouping the actions by level of involvement of others. So first is learn on your own. So what activities can we promote to encourage individual learning? So first, start a library. So this doesn't just have to be books. Books are the easy thing to just collect and put in a library that anyone can grab. But what about blog posts or articles, screencasts, videos, any content that is worth sharing with your team? It's worth creating this repository of all the things your team is interested in and sharing it and highlighting these materials to make sure that everyone is aware of the things that they could learn. And this also means that you need to give people the time to read or watch all these things. But it's making people aware that these things are there. So this is an obvious one for us at FutureLearn, taking online courses. But everyone on our team is encouraged to do this, be it on our own platform or on competitors. So beyond learning new things, we also get exposed to how other companies are doing stuff in the same space as we do. One way of doing this, though, is we also organize a breakfast club for the courses that we know are popular among our entire team. So in this case, we get a bunch of people together that are all taking the same course and have breakfast together before work, so that we can discuss the things that we're learning and making sure that we're not just doing this on our own, but together with other people. So while this might not be directly applicable to everyone here, just think about what you're currently working on and think of other similar resources out there that you can get inspiration from. So the second layer is learn from each other. So what events and activities can we arrange to allow people to learn from each other? So pairing is one of the obvious ways of learning directly from another person. So at FutureLearn, though, we don't only pair on code. So writing blog posts, creating presentation, coming up with a workshop, working directly with someone on a problem, it means that you get to see and learn how they would solve stuff. So the second thing we organize is a weekly learning hour. So this happens every Friday in the afternoon. Somebody hosts it, and they teach something that they think other people might find useful. And they tend to be very hands-on and workshop-like. And they can be about anything. So past ones have been about how to use command line tools, how to run retrospectives, how to understand database indexes better. It's all about one thing that somebody thinks other people might benefit from. And it's up to the rest of the company to come along or not. It's never the fact that we never have every single person in the company attending these workshops. It tends to be more like between the 10 and 20 people. But it's up to each person to volunteer to do this. So the third thing we organize are lightning talks. So these happen every 4 to 8 weeks. And basically everyone in the company can give a quick 5-minute talk about anything they want. So this is an example of 6 of the talks that were given recently. And it's a great way to get people to recognize that they have something to share and to talk about. And it gives them the experience and confidence to do this more. The fourth thing we organize are Hackdays. And we've done 4 now, basically 1 every 4 months. And our internal Hackdays are a little bit different than the community ones. So for starters, it's not just for our developers and our designers. It's for our entire company. So we try to get every single team involved. We try to get the upper management and the CEO involved. And next to that, our Hackdays, they aren't about shipping things quickly. It's much more about collaborating and learning from people that you maybe wouldn't work with on a day-to-day basis. You know, putting a marketing person next to someone from our content team, someone from our strategy team, and a developer, put them together and see what they come up with. So the next level is learn from the community. There are always lots of meetups and conferences like this one going on. So how can we learn from those? So the first step is actually attending the conferences. The second step is sharing what you learn at those conferences and reporting back to the rest of the team. So whenever someone attends something, we encourage them to share what they learned. And it's completely up to the individual how they do this. So it can be through a presentation, it can be through an internal or an external blog post, or it can be through a workshop. Or what I like to do is create sketch notes. As long as you share in some way or another what you've learned. So one variation of this is talks we love. So in this we basically watch a recorded video of a talk that one person on the team had seen previously and really enjoyed. And this is then followed by a discussion about things that we might want to do ourselves or things that we might want to change. The only caveat is the person has to have seen the talk themselves. You can't just suggest a talk that you'd like to watch and then hope it might be good. So another type of event we organize are FutureLearn talks. So we basically invite an external speaker in to give a talk or a Q&A for the entire company. And these can be people from other startups, or they can be from our university partners, or they can come from completely different fields. As long as we think they've got something interesting to share with our entire team. And then finally we arrange knowledge exchanges. So these are with other startups and companies, and we basically invite a couple of people from their team into our office for a day, and they get to see how we do things and have discussions about how our processes work. And then we do the same the other way around. So we get to see firsthand how other teams work and get to see how they might do things that we want to do. So the final level is learn by teaching. If we've learned from each other and from the community, can we give back and help the community learn from us? So in the past year, we started writing more blog posts on a much more regular basis. So they range from how we write CSS to how we do product management and how we do modular design. It's all about sharing what we do and what we learned on a much wider basis. So make sure that people can learn from the things that we've gone through. And finally, there's giving a talk, like I'm doing now. And both with writing blog posts and doing talks, it's the process of creating them also and figuring out how to frame your thoughts and ideas that it gives you a better understanding of the subject that you're talking about. So you just don't only teach people, you're learning through what you're teaching. So just learning new things though, it's not enough. We need to take time to reflect on those as well. So the most regular thing we do are sprint retrospectives. So at the end of each sprint, in our case that's every 2 weeks, we look back at how those 2 weeks went. What did we learn? What went wrong? What could we change? And we do then similar things for like incidences, like the site going down or something terribly going wrong. And then also for longer running projects. Finally, not everyone in our team does this, but I also try to do a personal retrospective. So what are the things that I've learned that I could change? What could I do better? And also keeping track of these means that you have a better understanding of what progress you've made and what things you have learned in the past year. So this is a quote from Ed Catmull again. It's very much again about retrospecting. So there are two parts to any failure. There is the event itself, with all its attendant disappointment, confusion, and shame, and then there is our reaction to it. It is the second part that we control. Do we become introspective, or do we bury our heads in the sand? Do we make it safe for others to acknowledge and learn from problems, or do we shut down discussion by looking for people to blame? So it's very much about retrospecting and making sure that these discussions do happen, because you need to learn from failure. You need to learn from the things you've done. And finally, repeat. So there's no use if you just do these activities as a one-off. You need to keep doing them and turn these into habits for your entire team. Make this part of your culture. Make sure that people expect that these things will happen. So that's how we support learning. So that's basically learn, reflect, and repeat. So I hope I've given examples of the things you might want to do with your company, with your teams, and things that you might want to do yourself. So it's 2015. You're sitting here in the crowd, listening to me talk about creating a culture of learning. And you also have to deal with imposter syndrome. And you like the sound of all these different things that you could do. So what do? So skip forward a year. It's 2016. Are you the same person that you are today? Is your team the same as it is today? Have you made any changes? So it's 2016. I'm sitting in the crowd, listening to someone give a talk. Is it you? Thanks.